There's a lot of elements that can dictate what makes a good image, bad image, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it really just comes down to the taste you developed and the style that you developed over your many years of shooting. So taking it from someone like me who's tried to at least get a little better at this thing since roughly 2014, what are the things I'm looking for that makes me go, that's a good image? Maybe this will help you find the little things that you consider a good image. Let's first look at the short film Edges that we talked about in a video a few weeks back. For reference, this film was shot on the Venice with DZO Vespid primes and a mixture of aperture lighting and nan light tubes. You can check out this video here if you want to see the full breakdown actually. Just this image here alone, there's 3 things I could tell you that really hit what I'm looking for in an image, and that's geometry, quote unquote light play, and the use of foreground and background elements playing with the depth of field. For the sake of this particular image, let's just talk about depth of field. Do you need shallow depth of field to have a good looking image? No, you don't. Does it help? Sure. But for me, I always use it in the same way most people do to isolate certain things, but really only if I can get a little bit of what I like to call a little bokeh sandwich. It's something I noticed in Rogue One and a lot of Greg Fraser's work, but having your thirds being dominated by out of focus elements with something in focus in the center is something I very much enjoy when getting a good image. Because when you see these out of focus things like the hands and in a direction, they're drawing you to the in focus elements like the gingerbread accessories here, and then you've even got the lantern and the chair out of focus. It's pretty much the easiest way to get depth with everything in your image. Sometimes people think you need like a big sprawling room or to be able to see really far in the background to get depth, but really it's the layering of the objects, the elements, and the talent in your image that's really going to give you that depth. Because we're not going that far at all to get to the other end of this table. But when you compare this front layer with our talent, the in focus layer with all the little fixins, and then that back layer which is just really a chair, and also that lantern, we have multiple layers of depth here without needing a giant set or a giant space to work with. Going to another shot in this film, this is all about subject, all about what do I like to see on the talent. I am somebody that comes from a huge and ongoing addiction of using natural light to get my image. But as we mentioned in that last YouTube video I made about edges, we talk about how can you evolve that to be able to use artificial light to get, in some cases, a better looking natural light, if that makes sense. You can look at Delaney here and see what we're getting with from the image. We're getting all the hot button words that everybody talks about. We're getting dapples of hard light. We're getting a soft key on the face. We're getting a little bit of a Rembrandt here. All of this was achieved using a light on the outside to get a little more of a pop on that hard light. I like seeing the reflections on the skin here because it really does give a sense of reality, but that quality of that highlight, it's not clipping, it's not popping too much. It feels very real on the skin, especially when it softly rolls into the midtones and then softly rolls into the shadows. And I would say 9 times out of 10, this is usually the contrast ratio I'm going for. Not to mention the sense of presence in this shot. If you've been on YouTube or studied filmmaking for more than 5 minutes, you've probably run into the clip of Roger Deakins. Explaining why his use of 32mm and wider lenses give a better sense of presence than, say, a tighter lens. I think this shot is a good example of what he's talking about. It's a close-up, but it's a 40mm on a friggin' full frame sensor, so you're getting enough tightness to get the image that I prefer. I'm not huge on wide angles, but I do enjoy seeing that presence that somebody like Deakins or other DPs are talking about. I love the way that I feel close to our character right now without feeling like you get the spying effect from a telephoto. And then going back to the last image, we're getting things like her shoulders giving us that depth from something like shallow depth of field being used properly, and of course the background itself giving us a texture with a little bit of checkerboard of lighting. We have parts of the wall that are getting hit, we have multiple different lighting values hitting your face, and of course we have a slightly controlled exterior window lighting that's giving us all the motivation we need. Let's take one last shot from Edges here. A big thing I'm looking for is perspective, and also you as the director or the DP are actively making a choice by saying, what are we seeing and what are we not seeing? Because what you don't see is just as important. And I thought it'd be really cool to get a behind the shoulder shot of our character here because it plays into all the elements that we've already talked about, but there's also something very oppressive about it when you're seeing it from this angle. And I love getting shots from this angle. It's not a pure profile, so we're still getting a good angle of the talent, being able to see roll in the back, the hair falling down, but also seeing dimensionality from the hands. It doesn't feel as 2D as a profile shot, but we still get that kind of off-put feeling from something like, 45-degree angle shot, the profile, blah, blah, blah. And we're getting that light play that I was talking about earlier. Reflections and light refractions off the coffee mug, a little bit hitting her nail, the way it's passing through her hair, and a lot of people talk shit on this, but I love the chromatic aberration we're getting from the DZO Vespids. You can see it in her hair here against the highlight of the window. All right, moving on from edges. I can't shut up about Trial 54 recently, so let's just keep talking about it. Specifically, really just this shot, and we'll do one other, but this one kind of hits the obvious ticks that I'm going for as a very moody director who likes stuff that, quite frankly, looks dark. This is like a massive contrast ratio here because you've got deep blacks happening and hard pops of highlights actually happening on the right side of the image here. But I bring this image up in particular because it shows one thing I'm looking for when making an image, and that is the confidence to let black be black, to let your deep shadows be friggin' deep shadows. Too often, especially in the narrative filmmaking space, am I seeing people do a lot of work to lift certain values because they get really scared of digital noise hitting the sensor. Sure, I bit myself in the ass sometimes with this, but as I've grown, I'm very comfortable with exposing for digital imagery, and I'm also, let's be honest, I'm really comfortable with how denoising is nowadays. So with an image like this, the shadow is what it's supposed to be. This is what it looked like in camera. I didn't deepen any shadows, I didn't lift anything, there's no power windows. This is the magic of letting shadow be shadow, the restriction of seeing the one eye. And at this point in the film, it is very appropriate for this character to feel lost, to feel defeated. And to have him so barely exposed in this image, it makes sense. If I had a bunch of lifts happening right now, or a bunch of hair light bullcrap, or trying to get a catch light, which if you notice, there's not a catch light in this. And to be honest, I am willing to forego technical excellence if it means I can maintain the tone I was going for in my image. Now, there are fantastic DPs out there that know how to balance that, just kind of like how we talked about edges. They know how to expose an area and how to maintain that very rich thing you're going for. But I do think a lot of DPs are doing a little too much, in my opinion. Don't be afraid to really let your dark scenes be, well, just that, dark. Or just get more comfortable with your camera and figure out where that, threshold is between too dark where you're starting to see too much fixed pattern noise or something like that, or when you're overcompensating. And notice how I mentioned catch lights. When it comes to narratives, I could care less about catch lights. Maybe more so in interviews and more stuff that leans towards the corporate or maybe a quote unquote brighter feel, I'll care about catch lights because they do have value, they do something. But usually for my narratives, I could care less if there's a catch light or not. If a DP can make one happen, great, all for it. But I don't feel the need to go out of my way just to be like, oh, there's a catch light or there's a really clean hair light. I don't care. Let's bring up this shot for one thing and one thing only. And I actually saw somebody on a podcast on like an Instagram reel talk about this, and it's such an important topic. Don't forget your friggin' inserts. People not getting their inserts can make some of the most boring scenes ever. Because if you're just going from your wide to your medium to your close and then calling it a day, it's just such boring filmmaking. It's texture and it's things that the body is doing or what they're touching or the textural elements of your background and your set, what's on the table, what they're wearing. That truly builds that very tangible feel to your film. I could have just let this shot roll out and show our character just, looking up and expressing what she's feeling. But the insert close-up of her hand on the table, it just adds so much to the entire scene. It's not, the greatest shot in the world. Obviously, it has everything we want. It's got depth, it's got layered lighting, it's got checkerboard effect, it's got good exposure in the hands, it's got all the basics we need, but What it really is doing that we needed is giving us a textural and feasible, tangible element to the scene. So for God's sakes, people, get your inserts. Because I'm in a place right now where I will forgo what seems like a very basic shot if it means that I can guarantee I can get my inserts. Let's move on from trial and take a little blast to the past. And I want to talk about this film in particular, The Reunion from 2022, because I kind of used it as ammo for what somehow became my most popular video on my channel. Thank y'all for that anyway. But let's give this thing its friggin' roses, because I think the DP Mikey D'Amico, who also shot Trial, shot his ass off for this thing. And it was a good mixture of him essentially having 80% of the cinematography responsibilities, and then I did some operating for some pickups, and also me doing some operating and some on-the-go, on-the-fly stuff. I bring up this shot because, one, it leans back into the insert conversation we just had, and also just getting what seems like random to really build upon the tone and the feel of your film. One of my favorite things ever is the intro to No Country for Old Men. I could listen to that voiceover and watch that first couple minutes forever. And it's just random stuff. But sometimes random stuff gives you tone. And this is literally just a random shrub being lit up by truck headlights. That's all it is. There is nothing else happening in this shot besides lensing and hitting record. And it also has something I'm usually looking for in a lot of shots if I can do it, and it's coming back to that conversation of light play. And also, are the lights active? Can I have a shot where I can turn lights on and off to have dynamic change in the scene? Can I have a scene where the lights maybe change colors? Can I have a scene where the light maybe moves around to simulate headlights or to simulate some kind of trippier element that's relevant to the film like we did in Recurrence? I love it when the lights can be mobile. I love it when they can have very big dynamic changes, because that's just a storytelling element. And while we're on the topic of this shot, this kind of like yellowy, strawlish gold color, that's something I'm looking for a lot. I love this color tone with a deep, burning passion. And then of course, just the framing and the silhouetting and the use of hard light into very, very deep shadows that I love to do in my films can be seen in this entire sequence. And then I like to reference this guitar scene a lot, where we get a lot of close-ups of him picking and playing. When it's scenes that aren't like normal conversations, and they're scenes of importance that lay outside the realm of, scripted conversations, I love getting just random coverage all over the place. I love a moving camera. I love a very natural feeling handheld where the depth of field can be played around with a bit, where a little bit of soft breathing can be introduced to make it feel very human, not make it feel like a mistake in the filmmaking, but like I said, it just brings that human element to the cinematography. And then it's just simply working around the fact that a window is giving us all the lighting we need, moving with these close-ups, with these somewhat jump cutty kind of moments. It just creates such a great mood, and also really helps with your pacing as well. And then for me, these are sometimes the most enjoyable moments to watch in a film. The other great part about shots like these, you could do them right now. You don't need sound for this. You don't need a lighting setup for this. This is just a tonal piece. If you're somebody that needs to work on their narratives, just write a little poetic thing that you can record on your phone or to a microphone, and then shoot stuff like this, montages. And to continue that concept of geometry with simpler things like frame within frames, and the conversations we had with Edges about how I like to use depth of field, we've got this shot here. Perspective to me is everything. I think one of the coolest things about a movie like, say, Interstellar, is that they shoot a lot of the scenes where they're witnessing stuff like the space station or the black hole. They're shooting it from the perspective of the human, going through the window, shooting it at the eye level of the person. Of course, there's the big extravagant shots, but they're taking the time to show a good sense of grounded presence. Shooting stuff like this, like our character in the back trunk, putting the camera in the car itself, shooting from the back windows, it creates such a great weight and geometry to the image like we've been talking about. For one, the lighting is great because it's golden hour, the sun is setting, there's some cloud in the sky softening up. You've got the trees in the background that are completely filling our space and getting hit by the sun a little bit so we don't just have a blank sky in the back. We've got movement in the truck itself that's giving us dynamic flow, and the frame within a frame itself, it looks cool, especially when out of focus, and it also works with the ideas that's going on with the end of the film, which if you watch the whole film, you'll see exactly what I'm saying. All right, I think that's enough to wrap that up there. This is a fun one. Should I do this more? I don't know. Go in the comments and let me know. Let me know what shots you liked, let me know what shots you didn't, or if there's something you want me to talk about next, or if you friggin' hated all these shots and I should just deactivate the channel now. I'm not gonna do that, but if you want to say it, I can't stop you. Anyway, this has been Davis with the Six Shop. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.